Morning, and welcome to another episode of Question Everything. So I was listening to a sort of a town hall telecast on CBC here last night. We've got a federal election on here in Canada, and the CBC is doing this series of town hall meetings with the different party leaders, putting them in the hot seat one at a time, and allowing members randomly. Well, actually, they haven't been randomly selected. They've been very carefully selected members of the public to fire questions at them. And I was lying on the sofa, desperately trying to listen to this, falling asleep because I'd just come back from a mad session of Taekwondo. Mr. Veraldi really worked us over hard, and I was, in fact, so hard that towards the end of it, I was getting very lightheaded. So I came home feeling like I'd done a very good workout and I'd done my job, and my body was thanking me profusely for giving it some exercise. But at the same time, I was falling asleep. And somewhere in the course of the discussion on this town hall meeting, somebody used the expression "out of touch," and I don't even remember the context. I guess that was how sleepy I was. But it made me think of how many times over the centuries. Well, I'm not that old, but how many times I've heard that expression used commonly in the course of political discussion, election campaigns, etc. So is always out of touch with the rest of the country. They haven't a clue what's going on. It's always an insult. It's always an accusation. You're out of touch, and it just got me thinking. It's that who says that you're out of touch, leveled at a political leader. Really, what it comes from a place where they're thinking, you haven't got a clue what my life is like. Please fix my problems for me. Make my worries go away. Make me feel that the future's going to be better. You're out of touch. You're out of step. But the rest of the country, actually, what they really should be saying is, you're out of step with me. But they will usually say, you're out of step with the country. Governments should not be there to be in touch or in step with you. They are there to provide stability for everybody. They're there to guarantee, or they should be there to guarantee, justice and liberty, and to think with rational and reasoned minimalism very carefully, and to act only when necessary. They're not there to fix your problems for you. That, I think, is a terrible malaise that has been affecting the Western world for the last century, certainly long before I was born. That governments exist to fix my situation in life. And I think that comes from a place of certainly spiritual poverty. I was going to say poverty, but maybe that's a bit extreme, but certainly spiritual poverty, that I can't fix my own problems. I can't make my worries go away. I'm always worrying about something. Government should do something to make my worries go away, so that I can just live in a sort of nirvana-like state. Listen, nobody is ever in touch with your reality. Live with that. Embrace it even. You're actually very, very capable of fixing most, if not all, of your problems. And most of your problems are going to find solutions for themselves sooner or later anyway. Don't expect governments or politicians to be in touch with you. That's a mistake, I think. Just for the record, you're not in touch with anybody else's reality either. You haven't a clue what my life is like, the problems I'm facing. How can you? It's not your fault. You should strive to be. We should strive to be in touch with each other and to understand, to sympathize and empathize with each other's problems. But you're never, ever fully going to be in touch with another human being. Eventually, you will find your problems are going to find solutions. You will get there. And I think there's also, it's worthwhile defining a difference between being out of touch and being out of step. I had this great aunt. She's long gone now, Aunt Doris, and she was a lovable old soul. Very short, must have been 5 foot if she was lucky. And she was she never married, single her whole life, but at the same, she managed nevertheless to always be in the center of the center of gravity of the family. Anytime we were in town, she was always organizing a family party, get together, a reunion. She kept talking about the wider family reunion that happened every year. She seemed to be the glue that held a lot of people together. It's very easy for families to fly apart, to grow distant from one another. It infects the whole human race. And maybe it was the fact that she was single her whole life, meant she was always very sensitive to being left out, because both of her sisters were married and had families. I don't know. I'm guessing, but she was a real social animal, always organizing parties, constant chatterbox, lots of fun, very, very generous with. She was never wealthy, but even with what she had, she was extremely generous with her time, her money, her opinions, definitely. But I remember her telling me off one day. I'd been in my late teens, and being temperamental teenager and full of my own opinions and my own thoughts and ready to spout off at anybody who would listen. I guess I can't even remember what I said or what the context for it was, but she clearly thought I was out of step with everybody else. And she told me this story about a little boy named Johnny who was marching in a band in a parade, and and he wasn't marching in step with the rest of the band. And his mother in the stands was suddenly remarked to everybody who would listen, "Look, the whole band is out of step. Only my little Johnny is the one who's in step." And she told me this. She had this tendency to talk to you and give you these sort of lessons of coming from her wisdom, her imparting her wisdom. She would never look you in the eye. She would always sort of look over your shoulder, as if to say, "You're out of step. You should be looking in my direction," or something like that. I don't know. But the implication to me was, you're out of step with everybody else. Everybody else. You're the only one who's out of step. And yeah, I suppose it's possible to be out of step and be wrong. I heard a great line yesterday. Genius is the willingness to be right. Or actually, I think it's the willingness to be wrong when everyone else is right, because you think you're right when everyone else is wrong. Genius is that it includes that willingness. You're prepared to risk being the odd man out because you think you're right and everyone else is. And that, I think, is the difference between being out of step and being out of touch. You want to be in touch as much as you can with everybody, but not in step. Think for yourself. Be in touch with people, but if you can't agree with them, then don't. Just because you're in touch doesn't mean you have to toe the party line and think what everybody else is thinking and stand on the same bandwagon that everybody else is standing on. No. Stand on your own. Think for yourself. Be prepared to be isolated, the odd man out. Most of my life I felt that way. I've always felt like I was the one on the outside looking in, the one left out of discussions, walking on his own towards the bus stop when everybody else was huddled in groups, chattering away. I was on my own. And it's not a nice feeling, but I've since learned that actually there's a lot of value in that. So don't be ashamed of being out of step. Strive for it, actually. Most successful investors will tell you that contrarianism is the way to go. That's the way to invest. You want to be buying when there's blood in the streets and everybody else is selling. And you want to be selling when everybody else is buying. That's how you make wealth. That's also how you think, how you come up with value to add to other people that nobody else does. So be a loner in that regard, but still strive to be in touch with them. Enough questioning everything for one day.